In verse 3, Paul states that this message he has received, he has delivered to them first of all. By this, he means that this gospel is the most important message. Other translations phrase this as, it's of first importance. And this is a very crucial thing for us to remember and really believe here today. The gospel, the simple and yet eternally profound gospel, must remain at the center of all that we do and believe. This might sound obvious, but there is a real danger here that we must avoid. We live in a church community that values strong doctrine, and seeing that doctrine then lived out concretely in our daily lives. So we have an interest in doctrinal and theological teaching, and also we strive to live out our faith in very genuine ways. And this is an enormous blessing, to be led by teachers who are faithful to teach the whole counsel of God from the Bible, and to be surrounded by a community of like-minded believers seeking to apply God's teaching to all of life. But all of this thinking and doing must be tethered to the gospel message, to the crucified and risen Christ. We must never move on from this good news. Now, what I am articulating may sound similar to a movement or a fad that some of you were probably caught up in or followed. It was called the gospel-centered movement. So they said we're going to keep the gospel at the center. Now, there are many good things about that movement, and I believe it really did help many people grasp a biblical gospel and ultimately get on a solid trajectory towards historic confessional Reformed theology. However, in other ways, that movement has shipwrecked. There are many opinions out there for what exactly went wrong, but I believe one reason is that in seeking to keep the gospel central, the gospel was actually confined. The gospel was confined. The gospel message, in a sense, was kept pure, but it was not one that was allowed to inform all other areas of life. And so you have guys saying, just stick to the gospel, brother. That's the only thing that matters, just the gospel, while families in our culture continued to fall apart. And this is not what I'm arguing for. Yes, we must keep the gospel at the center. It must be our foundation. But to use another metaphor, we should view it as an ever-flowing waterfall that runs out as a mighty rushing river into every area of our lives. The gospel is the source. It is the life. All other doctrine and all other practices must flow out of it, but its message must always be kept as of first importance. And so the gospel is the center. But as Pastor Doug has written, imagine then, if you want to say the gospel is the center, it's at the center of a circle, and then just make sure that the circumference of that circle runs out to the edges of your life. There's no area that it doesn't touch. And this is because the gospel does speak to everything. It speaks to doctrine, your relationships, child rearing, politics, education, you name it. And so the warning here is that we must never allow these good things, these good beliefs, or these good practices to eclipse or replace then the gospel. We must never allow our interest in Reformed doctrine or our practice of Christian education or our engagement in politics take the place in our hearts and in our families reserved for the simple news of Jesus Christ.